Welcome back again to the part 2 of Pamsc Chapter Online Design Series 3.0. Thanks again for joining this session. Just a short introduction on this design series for those who did not attend our first part with Alan Kwek on last Friday. The series intention is to create a sharing platform to talk about design informally after work on Friday. And today is the second session of the 4-part series of sharing. And we'll have another 2 on the coming consecutive Fridays. And the theme for this series 3.0 is Back to Basics, whereby we would like to reach outside Malaysia to our fellow Malaysians working overseas. And today we have Andrew Chow from Ipoh, who is now practicing in Shenzhen, China. Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
And later on, his sharing may cover some part of his journey, experiences, project involvements, and differences in practicing locally and abroad. So I think that's it for the short introduction and a bit background of the series. Again, as a reminder for those who need CPD points, there will be sign in and sign out code on the screen later. And you will need to write both down for the Google Form registration. As for the Google Form, the QR code will be shared on the closing slide with clickable link in the chat box, which will direct you to the Google Form. You need to fill in and submit the form, then you are eligible for the CPD point. For your information, the Google Form is accessible for 30 minutes only after the sharing session. Okay, I think happy hour begins. Let's welcome our moderator, Alan Lau from IDC Architect. Here you go, Alan. Thank you.
Thanks, Freddie. Welcome everybody to this to another Friday. To the second episode of the Pamsc Chapter Online Design Series number 3, and I am AR Alan Lau, and I'll be your moderator for today's lecture. Thank you everybody on Zoom coming online to hear us. Thank you for supporting this lecture series, and thank you for your interest in the work of Malaysian architects and designers, both here and overseas, about which this whole series is based. We'd like to say a big thank you to our partner and sponsor for today's lecture, Great Empire, and we'll be hearing a little bit from them later on in the program. Thank you, Great Empire, for helping to support the work of Pamsc Chapter and of Malaysian architects and designers. So just a brief outline of today's program. As Freddie mentioned, we'll be hearing from Andrew Chow of Intact Studio, and he'll be speaking in just one long session. And then after that, we'll take a short break and we will come back with some Q&A. So please, if you have burning questions, please type them into the chat on your Zoom dialog box over there, and I will draw your questions from there. And yeah, so anyway, so apart from that, next time has come to introduce our guest lecturer today, who is speaking to us from his office in Shenzhen, China. Andrew Chow is one of the co-founders of Intact Studio. He graduated from the Architectural Association in London before setting up a contemporary practice based in Shenzhen in 2017. He has worked with various award-winning practices in the UK, China, and Malaysia on a wide range of projects, including civic and public design, mixed-use developments, workspaces, hospitality, and exhibition design. He has participated in the Shenzhen Hong Kong Bi-City Biennale of Urbanism and Architecture, presenting exhibition and research projects such as Urban Witness, the transformation of Sheko Fishing Port, and Heteromorphopia, Urban Villages in Unwritten Histories. Andrew also collaborated with Dr. Tom Verbus on a research project called Hong Kong, China Urbanisms, 4 short stories about Hong Kong, which was exhibited at the Seoul Biennale of Architecture and Urbanism in 2019. Intact Studio operates in the field of urban design and architecture with particular focus in interiors, installations, furniture and product design, research and spatial scanning, which I'm quite eager to hear about later. The specificities of context, culture, program, and innovative use of materials are critical in their work. And so, without further ado, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Andrew Chow.
Thanks.
Hi, Andrew.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks, Freddie. Thanks for a very good introduction of us. Also, thanks to Freddie and Pam for inviting me to share this session, and also to say thanks to Pei, who is the next guest next week that's going to present. Pei is my friend and classmate, and she invited me to this talk. So thank you very much. So I think a lot of you guys didn't know about us. We are in Tech Studio. So my name is Andrew Chow. I'm from Para. I'm not from Sarawak. So I'm from Toronto, a small mining town. So I'm one of the. So I'll start the presentation. So we sort of registered our firm back in 2014 when we just graduated from Part 2 at the AA. So this is actually our dormitory. Just a few blocks away from the AA. After that, we departed. I stayed in London, and my partner Chow is in China, and Sarah is in London. And then we were only started to work on a project after 2 years, where a very dear friend of us in Shenzhen commissioned us a project. And from then on, like, because we are at different continents, so we work online afterward at different time zone with 3 pairs of hands for almost 2 years. So fast forward, I moved to Shenzhen in 2017. And back then when I moved over, like nothing was properly set up. Project contract was not even signed back then. So that was pretty crazy. But now we are a team of 7 after 4 years. Like, and throughout these years, our work kind of spanned from the interiors, architecture, installations, product designs, and research. But most of these are mainly still focused on the interiors, especially on food and beverages. Well, starting in Shenzhen, like sort of a conscious decision, because first thing is our first project was there, and later on, like a lot more project that kind of came in, and we felt that like in Shenzhen, due to like the speed of the constructions, as I think all of us know, like the Chinese speed, just like able to allow us to produce a lot of work in a short amount of time, and also like the availability of the craft within the city and stuff. So what really blew my mind really is the speed, because for this, like the project on the left, it's the last project I work on in London. I sort of like spent like almost a year to finish like a 70 square meter like reception space, and on the right, including like design phase, demolition and construction, is just 3.5 months, which was quite, which was way too fast. And like when I first reached Shenzhen, like I just can't cope. So, but I think it's not hard to imagine like this kind of speed building here in Shenzhen, because like with a history of like 40 to 50 years, like Shenzhen is actually a city that built from farm and villages. So I'm not sure like if everyone knows about the city, but the city is actually like before this, it's actually properly started from like sort of 1980s and a small fishing village, and then it's sort of like from scratch built up into a city. And so like the rebuilding up of this city, like the tearing and rebuilding is very normal. So like an image like this on the top left is actually an urban village within the city, and the top right is like the kind of glitters that we see in Shenzhen, like in magazine. So like, and the last bit is like the demolition in Baishizhou. This is sort of like a village that's not far from where I stay. And back then when it was being demolished, it's like within like, I think a week or so. So that was pretty crazy. And then later on, it's just being rebuilt like in a super quick time. So this condition of constant tearing, rebuilding of the city, and this contrast, this huge contrast of the urban village and the city, sort of like of Shenzhen sort of like become the foundation of our architectural like exploration. So today I would like to touch and share some of the design that we work on the old part of Shenzhen, which is the urban villages that we are fascinated about, and the new part of the Shenzhen, and also like the research project that my company work on, which is the Shell port that was mentioned before. So our firm Chinese name is called GUD. GUD sort of like in situ or like something that's on site. And to be translated in English. And because we take a lot of inspirations like on site or like ingredients on site or locally. And especially like on these urban villages. So this is also something that's inspired by Maurice, who's a French sociologist that talks about, because he talks about the city, he talks about urban space is a receptacle of collective memory. And for us, we think that the urban villages is quite fascinating because like it sort of has all these like urban memories and collective memories that we could actually extract from. But like, because Shenzhen, the way how it's being developed, like it's just been constantly being demolished and not able to develop. So like, and his theories, which is like being expanded by Rossi in the architecture of city, he argues that the city remembers through its building. So the preservation of the old building fabric is crucial, like analogous with the preservation of the memory in human mind. So our choice of preservation or demolition of built fabric shapes our collective memory of the space. So if most of these like significant buildings or urban villages are being destroyed or like demolished, then we think like Shenzhen kind of lost its distinctiveness or identity. So like for us, so for the next project, I would like to touch on how the urban villages, how does the project sort of like inspired from these urban villages and the fabric of urban villages. So this project is called Nado. It's a restaurants based that's sandwiched within the urban fabric. And the site is actually located in the northern part of Shenzhen. And as you can see, like in the red box, on top of the red box, it has this like earliest government building and shopping mall. And on the southern bit is where these typical urban villages stayed by the migrants. And starting in 2017, a large developer, developer and UTN sort of worked together to redevelop the whole place rather than, but the way how they developed it is kind of sort of like partly demolished and partly maintained. So like most of the fabric right now is sort of different from what it was. So so Nado is a renovated restaurant that's actually located within UTM village, and this village is actually about 25,000 square meter. There are about like 114 blocks with a built area of like 126,000, and within when it's sandwiched within this developed zone, it's quite interesting to see like the scale of this building and the rest. And before Nado, this block was actually known as Block 53 back, and it was built actually when we trace through the history, it was actually built back in 1988, which was just like the beginning of Shenzhen city when it's being developed. So so like being as a border between this urban village and the new city, we were sort of how we got this project is because like before we was being appointed, we had this really small project at the storefront on the ground floor, which is called Urban Store. We name it Urban Store because back then when the developer company, when they developed this place, there were 8 architects were being appointed to create different events for the city, and we were one of them. And for us, we wanted to create an event space for people to know more about these villages that's been affected by the demolition and upgrading of the urban villages. So through that, the client known us, and because we were working on a lot of F&B projects, so that's how we got it. And it's interesting to see, like, before we renovated the building was really run down. This was on the second, this on the far right, that was before that it was a flower shop, it's a florist shop and a sundry shop. And on the top part and behind the shop is actually where they stay. And on the top bit is, this is the gated like balcony where you can see to the like new shopping mall across the road. So I'll share like the video of the interior of the building before and after. So let's enjoy. So it's pretty run down, and then like when you actually move up for that, the building was changed because the back was structure was not so the whole building was actually quite. So this is the final building. So this is the plan of the building. So like the red bit was demolition part of the building. So the building, when we first got it, like it was fully constructed with like brick walls, and so we would like to create a layer of spaces. So like these are the sort of like walls that we kind of demolish to introduce a lot of openings to create layers of spaces. And this was the condition of the site when it's being demolished. And as you can see on the left-hand side, that was the floor on the first floor. When we first went in, the whole floor felt like it's gonna like fell down, like because it's just so weak, the structure itself. These pictures that showing here is showing were the pictures that we kind of depicted around the site. This is within Yutian urban village, and it kind of show like different facade of this village. And based on statistic, like urban village in Shenzhen is quite crucial because based on the statistic, in Shenzhen, there are about 7 million of out of 12.5 million of people that actually kind of stay in urban village. So this is actually quite a large sum of population, like from students, shopkeeper, engineers, and even some of the friends that I've known actually stay there. And when I first came to Shenzhen, I also always go to these places because the food was so good. And it's just create a different kind of atmosphere compared to the city. And it's just have a different unique background, also because like I'm coming from Kampong as well. So we kind of name when we first got the project, we kind of have an idea that could we actually sort of miniaturize the urban village, urban village into a streetscape within this space. And so we reinterpret like the typical and tight alley of urban village streetscape by introducing like the street store, street bar, street bench, step plaza, and open courtyard. And these were the first sketch that we kind of like produced on how we interpret these spaces within the building. And this diagram here is the way how we interpret this urban village on a horizontal manner. And we thought, could we, through reorganization, reimagine this cafe, dessert store, the open public plaza in the middle, the yellow bit, and the street vertically, as you can see on the left, like sort of like group them and reorganize them into vertically, so that the atmosphere of this beer bar, the step plaza, this food court, sort of like restacked and reorganized within the building itself. And so this is the view of the restaurants within the city. So we thought like by having this sort of streetscape, we would like to sort of having the exterior to be fully enclosed and to only reveal a strip of window to the outside, so people could like experience a total contrast from the street and the building. This showing like the exterior of the building within the site. So on the left, as you can see, like we sort of create this like sort of a 5-foot way like corridor, sort of like set back. The one that you see from the shop before, we kind of demolished it and then like giving it a setback, and then to create this entrance space for the restaurants. And here is the vertical entry to the second and third floor. For this place, for this space, we kind of do like punctuation to create this continuation of visuals, space visual from the staircase to the outdoor courtyard. And this space we actually like do the list decorations. So like even on the floor plan, the way how we sort of name or design the space, we sort of name them as like street bench, pancake store, beverages store, to sort of like give a different feel to the space. And for the material itself, we picked to use a pebble washed stone, and this stone is actually available on the old house before it's being demolished, which is on picture on the right hand side. And this material is kind of crucial because back then it's kind of popular in the early 20th century in Guangdong region, and most of the buildings were using these materials in the 80s, but then it was like kind of forgotten now. And then, but this technique of like using pebble washed stones rely heavily on the skills of the craftsmen and the workers. So using this material, we sort of create a stark contrast when from the outside and the inside, from to when people getting in. So this is the entry point where when people move in, you have this reception at the front, and it sort of like spin people out from into different spaces. And the section here showing the relationship of these different food store, the courtyard, and the dining spaces. So this on the second floor, as you can see, like this at the front part here, this was actually a bedroom for the users back then, and that was the room for his daughter or son, I forgot. But then that was the corridor at the very back. That was the corridor of the house where we saw earlier with gated frame. So this was on the second floor. And on the top floor of Nado, this is we create this like public step garden. And here, like we are showing this the process of construction. So like it was quite interesting because like back then the whole space was actually enclosed, and the contractor sort of like use this machine sort of tear down like a piece of paper on the wall. It was quite interesting. So, and for the next project that I want to talk about is MQ Coffee Stand, which was also sort of completed roughly the same time as Nado. It was also kind of situated within the urban village, not far from our office. And as a corner store, this was actually old driving school, sort of learning center. And we like when we actually found the site, there was this 2 flower pots that's actually on the site, and we were kind of inspired by the picture on the bottom where we see this this shop. He kind of used the space of the, what do you call it, the overhang, this overhang signage to create his space. But actually this is not supposed to be private space, supposed to be a public, but then the way how he uses kind of like very fascinating. So we thought like, could we sort of like steal this, like pop in this flower onto the site, and then to use this landscape to sort of increase this private space. So this was the concept that we produced at the beginning, where we were thinking like, could we like bring in the landscape into the building and then to recreate an island, and then the space of the streetscape sort of like become an extension of extension within the space again. So this was the final outcome of the space. So like from the plan, this is like the whole the island of the coffee shops, and the streets on the outside sort of like become extension and entering into the space. And also like we thought like maybe it's interesting to like reintroduce like different sort of plants that we found on site, and then reorganize them into the store. So this was part of the constructions of the cafe. And it's quite sad that like right after we finished the building sort of like hit by a lorry, and then the whole thing kind of like crumbled. So this was like this for like 3 to 4 months before we sort of using a different material to sort it out again. So this is sort of to fill the space.
J'ai deux amours, mon pays est Paris, par eux toujours, mon cœur est ravi. Manhattan est belle, mais à quoi bon la nier? Ce qui m'en sorcelle, c'est Paris tout entier. Le est Paris, mon pays est Paris.
So after this was being built, like it sort of become a community hub for the local people, which was quite interesting. And for the third project that I would like to talk about, So for the third project I talk about, it's also an MQ coffee restaurant. It was actually located within Longhua, which is located in the new development of new Shenzhen, northern Shenzhen region. And within this space, like the whole area is sort of like newly developed and heavily developed into new modern towers and structures. And the site is actually, before that, it was kind of like sightless. And the site on the left-hand side, this was our site. And at the front part is like on the progress on where they're gonna build a new garden. So this site was basically everything was like new. So when we first arrived to the site, we were thinking, I think we were quite fascinated by these like columns at the front. And we're thinking like, could this column, when we sat back in, the idea of the space to recreate this arcade idea in the 18th and 19th century, so that it would become like a platform for the people when they sit there to enjoy this garden at the front. And this idea of arcade sort of like have a similar idea of Chilo, which is quite popular in Guangzhou back in 1912, where this also sort of like heavily influenced in Singapore 5-foot way or Malaysia 5-foot way later on. And this is the first impression of our sketch of the space, how it looks like. And we're thinking like, could this idea of Chilo doesn't just appear at the front, but then it actually sort of like carry throughout into the space within. So this is the image. The project was actually just finished like last 2 weeks. So these images was just was still in draft mode, and it just we just got it like a couple of days ago. So yeah. So as you can see, like the front part, we sort of create this arcade space, and then the roof sort of like tilted down, and then this will sort of like create a vacuum of space to attract people from the outside. And then the front part, we would like to create this extension of garden where we can see from the pictures before. We like to create this like sort of having this garden to compound the space, and the colonnades and the arcade space sort of like become like a platform to view this garden at the front. And then, so this is a plan. From a plan, you can see like this arcade sort of space at the front bit sort of carry throughout from the top and the bottom bit of the alleyway, and the middle bit sort of become like a courtyard space of the plan. So this was a picture that's taken by one of my friends, florist. Shows like how the people will actually react on the space. Sorry. So So for us, we are thinking like when this arcade, this sort of like ceiling arcade, like could the differentiation of this ceiling and the space will create a different kind of spatial quality. So from the plan, you can see here, like on these different spaces, like we have this different height to express a different spatial quality. So as you enter from the front to the back, the ceiling height sort of like slowly, gradually like going down. So this the section of space. So from the front bit, you actually comes in from a very tall arcade space, and then slowly, like depending on different space that you actually spend on, it's sort of like turning different height differentiation. So this is the side arcades. You can see like the ceiling sort of like from flat and then it goes up, and then we thought of like, could the ceiling sort of introduce some lights in, sort of create a different atmosphere. And the material for this, we are thinking we're using 彩胶石. I'm not sure what's that called in English, but we sort of having the same technique as the washed pebble stone, but without using the concrete, the cement, and as a result, you have this sort of like textured, vibrant red color on the wall, and in contrast with the red paint. So this sort of like giving a different texture when people move from far to up close. So this showing like different arcade space. So when you move from one to the other, like it's sort of like giving a different spatial experience. And as for the flooring for the project, we sort of having very quite interested to sort of to explore like the terrazzo, like the old Guangzhou terrazzo, and how we could sort of like pixelate them. And as you can see from the picture at the top here, the workers on tiling these like marbles, they sort of like it's just need to see this to be tiled on. And this is showing like from the kitchen going to the front. So we have this like layer of spaces. And also I think one of the like great opportunity to work in Shenzhen, China, is that we could able to like do a lot of like bespoke work in a kind of like in a quite low cost. So like for this project, we're also able to like create our own bespoke furniture. So this sort of like some of the process of the furniture for the restaurants. And I think the time is moving quite fast. So the last one I would like to touch on is something that's something fun that we work beside our project, which is sort of a scanning, space scanning. And for Shekou Fishing Port, this project is something that we submitted for Shenzhen and Hong Kong Biennale 2 years ago. And this project is quite crucial because back then Shekou Fishing Port was sort of the last fishing port in Shenzhen, and we thought that it's crucial. Perhaps you could do something before it's gone, and we're thinking like, could we use a different scanning system to sort of archive the space, this huge space itself. And with a group of students, we went to the site and sort of recaptured the whole space again. And this is sort of like we could actually see this the whole Shekou port, and the whole entire space. We could sort of scan it down, and then we could actually experience this in three-dimensionally, like 1-to-1 scale when we project it on the space. And it's quite interesting that the site itself, there's all these fishermen before they're being demolished, all their places are displaced. So for the final project, we sort of like scan this whole shape. And this shipping vessel is a place for a family of a fishermen to stay when they were there. So we're thinking like maybe we can do a very deep scanning, and then by having this space, maybe when the space was still demolished, actually use this in future like discussion. And also we believe that through this scanning, it will actually give us different possibility to like designing or even like to think about space. Showing the section of the space of the ship vessel. We're thinking like in the future when these are no longer there, we use this to be re-experienced again for a newer generation to re-experience again the space. And that this would trigger a different kind of like design. So yeah, so that's for today's sharing from me. So yeah, so that's from me.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Yes.
A fascinating insight into your work. We're going to have a Q&A session after this, but first of all, before that, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to hear a little bit more from our sponsor, Great Empire. So please stick around for the Q&A, and please put in your questions on the chat.
Hello.
Hello and welcome back.
Hello. Hello.
Hi. Thanks, Andrew, so much for that talk. So we're going to go into our Q&A session right now, and the questions are coming in, but I'll start with one of my own.
Okay.
Your first two, there's obviously a big range of scales in the projects that you presented. There are 3 out of your output today. You went from the very small to the very large scale and all that, and that's itself is another very interesting topic in itself. My question about the first 2 projects that you were talking about, I mean, given that as you alluded to, China, it was probably more notable for demolishing large tracts of its built heritage rather than preserving it. The fact that the 2 buildings that you first showcased, 2 works, they seem to be self-consciously keeping the original fabric of the building. Was it something that was required by the client, or was it something that you had to convince them to do? Did you have to convince them to retain the old fabric, or were they very interested in doing a complete new build?
That it was part of the requirement because because when the client took it, it was actually for the first project, Nado, when the client took it, it's actually from Wanke, and they sort of require them to still keeping them. But then I think the clients at the beginning, they want us to completely change the whole thing, like they didn't want to keep like the staircase, they didn't want to keep anything. It's like, and so we just try to convince them on that. So I think about what you mentioned, like to demolish everything, so we haven't come across that yet. But for most of the interior project that we do or buildings, most of them, they're still like in that condition we work on. So yeah, but then it's true, like as I showed before, like the urban villages that in Shenzhen, most of them are being demolished and just rebuilt from scratch. It's pretty normal here. It's just that we haven't have a project like that yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a question from Min, and it says, I liked how you tried to replicate the original building materials and techniques to create such attractive interiors. Have you thought about how projects like these benefit the original inhabitants of the village?
Because I think in the end, this is still like sort of a commercial project like by the clients. So I think from us as an architect, we could only like sort of like to bring in the values, what we see of the village, to sort of continue this like uniqueness of the village, and to convince the client to have this within the interior, and not just totally to do like completely new thing. So yeah, I think that's that. But like, because like this in the end is still like restaurants where people want to spend money on, but like within this village, most of these people, these people that actually stay in these urban villages, they are not that they're not like sort of like working class, most of them, so they can't actually spend money on. So it's different.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's quite obvious that you're talking about a completely different audience, I suppose. You went from, I mean, you went from one type of audience to another, but it was quite interesting how you were able to sort of bring the kind of the experience of the original fabric of the city back into the interiors. Was that quite a conscious choice for you?
And also, like, I think because we are like from architectural background, in the end, we try to like create spaces through this geometry, like through this fabric of like in the street or other village that we see, or from like the town, which is quite interesting for us. I think that's sort of like create a different space atmosphere. Also like this, yeah. So yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, we got a question about setbacks, and I think what was quite interesting was that the 5-foot way played quite a large role in your first 2 projects.
Yeah.
And I suppose I mean, we probably are so used to it in Malaysia, right, that we kind of forget how they really define the social space of our cities. But I looking from your pictures, I suddenly realized, oh, they don't do that in China, isn't it? The 5-foot way is not really not really a part.
It's quite common in Guangzhou, but in Shenzhen, because everything is so new and you don't have it. You do, but not a lot. There's only certain part, and because like as I mentioned, like Shenzhen, the whole city was actually born out from the village. Just as someone mentioned, like it's not supposed to be village, it's a marketing term. No, it is a village. It was a fishing farm. It was a village. So like there's a lot of village that's actually like surrounded by the tall towers itself. So like you not have like in Guangzhou this like 5-foot waves of term, but they do have all these overhangs canopy or overhangs like floors, which sort of have some similarities with 5-foot waves, but not really. But I think it's sort of the same kind of type that we could introduce.
Okay, but I thought it was quite interesting how you actually, you know, like it's quite interesting. The old city had these things, and obviously there was an unconscious cultural of appropriating these spaces. The new city came in and completely got rid of all these.
Yeah, it's
and here you are trying to put them back, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just like glass and wall. Yeah, so it's interesting. I think like at the beginning, like for us to convince the client to talk about like vertical urban village, I think the client was like, what are you guys talking about? so we need to like use a different term, sort of to convince them in the space. Yeah.
Were they in the end very receptive to what you were doing, or was it quite hard to explain?
I think it's quite hard because like we are so young. One thing, we're so young and we are so new. And for these clients that they had a couple of restaurants before, for them to trust us, like talking about like urban village and stuff, when other architects were talking about all these glamorous spaces, they were like, okay, I you guys know what you guys doing. So yeah, but I think it takes time to like build the trust, and again through like images, renderings, models. So we try hard to work on different mode to explain our ideas, which in the end they were convinced. And right now it's actually one of the top popular restaurants in Shenzhen. Sort of like Instagrammable space, as I saw. Although we didn't actually like purposely design like Instagrammable space within the space within that building, but yeah.
Wow, that always feels good.
Yeah, so they were glad in the end, so that was fine. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question here. Hi Andrew, what is 采家食? What is that? Sorry, I didn't.
采家食. I think that's I have them. So that's that. It's sort of they use it on the road, but then we use the same kind, because this is a pebble washed stone where they use
Concrete.
Yes, concrete and stones to merge together. But then this one, they kind of used glue to glue them together. You do not see the concrete. They use the transparent glue, but then it sort of have this like texture of this, but without concrete. So it looks a different kind of like modern feel to it. Yeah.
I mean, it has a more, I imagine that it would have a more sensuous sort of texture because
so and like as you can see like when we first produced the renderings, the red pebbles, we sort of create so many testing. I think about 10 over like testing, and the contractor kind of get fed up. And in the end we kind of come to this, but then it requires a lot of craftsmanship. And I think one thing that we're quite lucky, like in Guangzhou, there's a lot of like different old craft. We kind of like get back all the old crafts again, and these crafts is like from, sometimes you have these people from the village in Guangdong, or like from somewhere else. So we just need to source them, and sourcing this takes time and stuff.
I've got a question from our President Chai Siyong. Sorry. Okay, it's from Ng Chiwi, sorry. Are there any problems in getting the construction qualities that you expect in Shenzhen? It's a big challenge here in Kuching.
It was when we first started. I think in the end, it's in the end, it's about how we control them in, I think that's about us. I think how we control them in the drawings, and to have the same kind of like motto or vision as us for the client. I think that's crucial. I think right now we are, I mean, it's kind of a privilege right now that the clients that we have kind of have the same vision, and they would like to get the same quality, and our quality we sort of, yeah. So that's that. But at the beginning, like when we first started, but yeah, so that was a big issue. But then we just need to like keep on controlling the contractor and stuff to make sure that they do the right thing. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. I thought that quite a lot of people have talked about the scanning exercise. I found it really, really beautiful, and a complete contrast from the kind of dollars and cents of the world that we had inhabited with the F&B outlets and all that. What was the? I mean, there's obviously a very there's the sense of wanting to document and archive the city. Or a part of the city as a snapshot in time, but what was the insights that you, what was the intention that you wanted?
We collaborated that with our friend from Shenzhen Uni, and I think for us we're thinking like that was part of the research of the company, because for us we think that drawings or documentations or works are crucial in terms of creative output. If the output of the drawings or the output of the materials that you actually used is different, I think the output of your design work will be different. So in the olden days, they were using like drawings and then we just draw on it. It's quite two-dimensional, but we're thinking like, would this like three-dimensional where you can actually experience in space one-to-one, could we use a different way to design? And we're still explore that. So so yeah, and also like it's actually quite beneficial for that to be discussed in the future, because like I think even right now there's a lot of like spaces, even though it's being demolished, the way how it's being archiving are only like in drawings, but not really something that you can feel or walk within the space, and that actually gives us a different tone of the project or the work of the building. So I think we try to do that.
Okay. I got a question. Based on your presentation, the contrast between the small and big scale buildings is quite extreme. How did you deal with this contrast in scale? What strategies?
What strategies? I think it still comes down to how you want people to experience space. How I think that's still down to how you want the users to experience the space. Like I think for the small project on the cafe, all we want to talk about is about the small little store, and then the extension of the streetscape into the building and having people to enjoy just a cup of coffee. That's a very simple intention, and to have this like little garden in front of the store. And for Nado, we want to create this really tight dining space just to emulate like the urban streets, urban villages streetscape. But then for MQ, we wanted to create a different contrast. So I think that's really comes down to what kind of spatial
experience, I suppose.
Yeah, experience, and a lot of drawings, a lot of models, drawings, sketches, discussion, and material testing. Yeah.
I think we're coming towards the end of our time, but I think I've got just one sort of like we'll end with one more question here. I mean, given the vast experience of China, I mean, China had the work in China obviously has been proceeding at a breakneck speed. You know, a huge number of projects, a huge amount of money, time, and spent on this. From what lessons do you think Malaysian architects and designers can learn from the experience of China when you're dealing with cultural memory and preserving urban fabric and that kind of thing?
I thought we need to learn more from Malaysian architects, because I think the part where keeping old buildings is not very strong yet over here, at least in Shenzhen. I think like in different cities like in Shanghai and stuff, I think that's quite strong. But I think in Shenzhen, because normally like for buildings that's actually less than 40 to 50 years, they're not even counted as like historic buildings. So so yeah, I think it's actually our firm kind of like wanted to do a lot more preservations on urban villages rather than just demolish them. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's good to hear. That, I mean, that you can. That's, I suppose that's a bit of something of Malaysia that you brought over to China, isn't it? That kind of.
Yeah, because I think like in KL, like you see like Saxon, Unit 1. I think the spirit that they carry, I think that's crucial. Like Saxon, he kind of like just do the most minimal like restoration to Kong Hing in Ipoh, and I think that's I'm pretty amazed. And that whole block sort of like brought up again, because back then when I was in Ipoh, that place was dead, and he sort of like bring up the whole scene again. So I think that was pretty good. I think here, like urban villages in Shenzhen, it has that potential, but then I think not many people are aware of it. But there are a lot of architects that like from now in Shenzhen, sort of like try to do that. But then yeah, it takes time, I think.
Oh, thanks for that. I mean, it's great to know that Malaysian architects and designers can also offer something to the world of architecture. You know, it's good to remind ourselves that we ourselves have a lot of like very interesting minds here and interesting approaches here that would make a great deal abroad. So thank you for reminding us of that. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Yeah,
So thank you so much for a very, very inspiring and some really, really beautiful and inspired work. We've come to the end of our session today, unfortunately, but we'd just like to say thank you to Andrew for giving us such wonderfully considered work and for sharing us a little bit of his slice of life in China, a Malaysian in China. And we hope that you're doing well over there and that you're safe and that you'll come back, have the opportunity to come back and visit us in person one day.
Yes. Can't wait. All right. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for like listening to sharing, and stay safe. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Andrew. And thank you to our sponsor, Great Empire. Without support, this lecture would not have been possible. Thank you to the members of the Pamsc Sarawak Chapter's Events Committee and all the volunteers that helped to make it happen. And thank you to our audience coming online and tuning in to us from locally and from abroad. It's really because of people like you and your renewed interest in the work and designs of Malaysian architects that keep events like this afloat. Well, next week, we're going to come back to Sarawak. We're going to be here from another Sarawakian architect who's working overseas. Andrew's good friend.
Yes, my classmate.
Yes, classmate Freo, who actually was instrumental in convincing him to appear in this series. Pei Yong is from Miri, and she's founded a studio called WY Design, and she will talk about her latest work in the city of Budapest in Hungary. So please remember to tune in again the same time next week. Thank you very much, and good evening to you guys.